Jai Suparikar Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Govinda Jiv Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Jiv Ki Jai Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Jiv Ki Jai Jai Shri Giriraj Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Shri Nitai Gauranga Ki Jai Shri Nrsimha Bhagavan Ki Jai Jai Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Srila Bhaktivigyan Bharati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Srila Bhakti Vipragyan Kesava Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Saparikar Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Mahabhagavad Srila Gaurkishore Das Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Vaishnav Sarvabhaum Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Srila Baladev Vijibhushan Prabhu Ki Jai Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Ki Jai Srila Narottam Srinivas Shyamananda Prabhu Trai Ki Jai Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Sata Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Srila Sarup Damodar Roy Ramananda Adi Gaur Parsada Vrinda Ki Jai Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Govardhan Dvadashavanatmaka Shri Braj Mandala Dham Ki Jai Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Yamuna Ganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Giriraj Govardhana Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Tribhuvana Pavana Harinam Samkirtana Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bhangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gaura Tishe Nama Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayane Kalo Kalmashanashaya Janava Pataye Nama Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Brindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams, my Shraddha Pushpanjali, at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Asto Tarasata Sri Srila, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta, Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. Then I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad, Paramahansa Asto Tarasata, Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad, Paramahansa Asto Tarasata, Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj. My Dandavat Pranams to all of my Sri Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga, and my Dandavat Pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. So now we resume Nectar of Devotion. Yeah, I mean, we're just reading one of the most remembered sentences for me. Because I remember when I was very new devotee, and I read for the first time and then consecutive times this Nectar of Devotion. And of course, at that time, we were so new to the whole philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, learning gradually, little by little. But this really made sense to me. And we read this the other day, but it was right at the very end, so I'm reading this few sentences again. Because here Srila Prabhupada is actually breaking down what Krishna consciousness is. You know, he started the Krishna consciousness movement. He's put out these various books. His devotees and disciples are beginning to go onto the streets all over the world and distributing. Prabhupada wrote this specifically with all these people in every single country of the world in mind, how they are going to be introduced to the Krishna consciousness movement. What is the Krishna consciousness movement? Where did it come from? What's it all about? So this book is Srila Rupa Goswami's masterpiece. It's his, what do they call that? There's a name for that. For an author when he has like... Magnum opus? Yeah, what is it called? Magnum opus? Yes, that's the word I was thinking of. Who but KK would know that? So magnum opus. And actually, what does that mean? That means his major work, right? Out of all the works, his major work. So Srila Rupa Goswami is famous for this particular book. Other books, they have some qualification. Like, for example, Ujjvala Nilamani, which is the sequel to the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's written for those who have the inclination towards Madhura Ras, particularly. Right? So then what to speak of the dramas, Lalita Madhava, Vidagdha Madhava, and many others. So But this book, this is the introductory book. You know, it's his first book also. And it's really encapsulating what he heard directly from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When you read the 19th chapter of Madhya Lila, in which Mahaprabhu is teaching Rupa Goswami, you see all the points that Mahaprabhu is making. And at the very end of that, what does Mahaprabhu do? He is called Sanchara, something like that, where he imbued his potency into Rupa Goswami and then ordered him to write these books. So he not only directly taught Rupa Goswami, but he also imbued his Shakti into him to be able to manifest this in this world. And we cannot underestimate or overestimate enough how important is this personality and his contribution, because he is the via medium through which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to give to the jivas what he came to give. And Rupa Goswami is the one. Now, we know that there are 6 Goswamis. Each of them have made a tremendous contribution, but it's very clearly admitted by all. I mean, even Srila Sanatana Goswami is the elder brother of Rupa Goswami, and he happens to also be his guru. You know, he's his guru. You were asking the other day, did Mahaprabhu initiate? Like, no, he didn't. But he gave Siksha, which is the real initiation. So, when Srila Prabhupada came now to the West with this incredible task of bringing the greatest literature, the greatest philosophy, the contribution of the greatest personalities that ever lived on our planet, he's going to bring that to the whole world. Now he has this little society, you know, with a couple of temples. San Francisco, by that time, 69, 70, he had San Francisco, he had New York. Then I think Montreal, and some devotees went to London, and a couple of devotees went to Germany. Very few temples, and very few disciples at that point. Maybe he had like 300 or something like that. But he's representing, what is Prabhupada representing? He's representing the greatest knowledge that was ever available to the human society. That's why it's such an amazing thing that Krishna arranged that the ship carrying him across the ocean was named what? Which means what? Duta means messenger, and Jala means water. The messenger on the water. Water messenger. Yes. Not only that, Krishna also had another, he's so wonderful the way he manifests things. Krishna manifested the first storefront temple. And it just so happened that prior to the devotees moving in, it was some kind of gift shop of old articles or whatever. All right? And what was the name on the window of that storefront? Even they kept it there for quite a while after they moved in. What was it called? That's right.
It's still there. I just saw it last year.
Oh, they probably put it back there again.
They have classes there.
Yeah, I know, because that when we went with Gurudev for the very first time, and the only time I think Gurudev went there, in 1996, they had taken it over. They had already taken it over for some years, and it was actually a preaching center again, you know. But quite the most amazing historical place that you could possibly have, a preaching center. But they were using it in that way. The apartment that Srila Prabhupada stayed in the rear, I don't think that they were able to acquire that. But this property, the storefront, actually they purchased it. It's belongs to ISKCON. All right, so Srila Prabhupada now, he's going to be presenting Srila Rupa Goswami as he is. As the teachings are. And it's so high. And never the conception of rasa. Try to understand this point. Never before was the conception of rasa presented to the world. No other religious literature. No other religious ideology. Conception of rasa. Why? Because they don't really even have a conception of God. The person that they name God. Jehovah, Allah, whatever. They don't really have a conception. But the Vedic conception begins with what? Ishvara Parama Krishna. And what's the next line? Did you know this verse from school? Say it out loud.
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Nadiradi Govinda Sarvakarnakaranam.
Okay, so right from the very beginning, Lord Brahma is presenting the three main tattvas of the Dasmul tattva. What are the three main tattvas of the Dasmul tattva? Amnaya praha tattvam, harir iha paramam, sarva shaktim rasabdim. Okay? I'll say this so that you can learn it, you can know it. Amnaya praha tattvam, harir iha paramam, sarva shaktim rasabdim. So actually in that first line of the 10 principles, Amnaya is presented first, which means the evidence, the praman. But the first three principles dealing with Ishvara are that Harir Iha Paramam and Tattvam. Harir Iha Paramam Tattva. That means he is the supreme truth. Hari. And that's Hari. Who is the supreme truth? Hari. We know. Srila Prabhupada used to say, in this Krishna consciousness movement, we know the name, the address, the telephone number of God. No other religion can tell you this. Who is his family members? What does he like to do? What does he like to eat? Who does he play with? Who does he work with? And how does he expand himself? In that first principle, you have something that no other religious conception has ever presented before on the earth planet. That supreme absolute truth expands his very own self unlimitedly, in unlimited forms, unlimited incarnations, infinite. No other conception has this. And I challenge, anyone can try, show me. No, you will not be able to find it. I know that. I've done my research. So Harir Iha Paramam Tattva. He is the supreme absolute truth. And what does Lord Brahma say? Ishvara Parama Krishna. He tells you right there. The supreme Param Ishvara, supreme controller of everything, is Krishna. And then the second line, now it corresponds with Rasabdim. Actually, Sarva Shaktim is also in the first line. Because all energies, they come from him. Everything that exists. Lord Brahma says, Anadir, Adir, Govinda. He is the source, and he has no source. So he's the one, he's the entity, he's the thing that existed before everything. Scientists are always trying to play around with that. What was the origin? Where did it all come from? but it's from him. And he didn't come from anything. He's always there, eternally. Sarva Shaktim. So, Anadiradir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. He is the cause of all causes. There's many other causes that he's created. They all cause things to happen. From the incarnations to the demigods, even down to earthly kings and leaders. All of them, they're causing things to happen. But he's the original cause. Nothing would happen without him. So these 3 points I just want to make before I begin to read Prabhupada's classic sentences. That Sarva Shaktim Rasabdim is essential in the Dasmul Tattva to understand the absolute truth. That Sarva Shaktim means he is the source of all Shakti. He is the source of all energy. All energy, every single tiny atomic particle of energy comes from him. Sarva Shaktim. And then the next point, he is the endless ocean of rasa. Rasabdim. Rasa abdi. Rasabdim. Abdi means ocean. So, this book is called Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. Do you know the meaning of these 4 words? Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. No, there's no drop word.
Oh, I'm thinking Sindhu Bindu.
Yes, that's Bindu. Yeah, but I mean, there's 4 words. Prabhupada didn't include in his title all 4 of them. He just said nectar of devotion. And that's a very nice, simple way to present to a Western audience. But first of all, what is that nectar? What is that nectar? Bhakti Rasa Amrita. Amrita means nectar, and Bhakti Rasa is what we're going to study. That there is an ocean, there is a Sindhu of this Bhakti Rasa Amrita, of this nectar. There's an ocean of it. So Prabhupada didn't say the ocean of the nectar of devotion in the title. He just said nectar of devotion. But the actual title is telling that there is an ocean. And Rupa Goswami is actually giving this example for the title because there are, in an ocean, there's the eastern side of the ocean, the western side, like this. So he's using this example to show that there's this unlimited expanse of Bhakti Rasa Amrita. And in the beginning of the book, he's showing how the impersonalists who want to experience another type of ananda, another type of ecstasy, which is called Brahmananda, right? That even the entirety of the happiness that can be derived from Brahma Sayujya, merging into Brahma, which is called Brahmananda, it cannot, even the entire ocean of it, cannot equal even 1 drop from the ocean of the Bhakti Rasa Amrita. So now, Bhakti means devotional service. So that's why you see all throughout Prabhupada's purports and so forth, generally he's not using the word Bhakti that often, like in Gurudev's and so forth. He's just using the term devotional service, because devotional service conveys the mood of service and devotion. Now he says, every service has some attractive feature which drives the servitor progressively on and on. Now Prabhupada goes into a little bit of the detail here. Every service, because everybody's serving. Do you know that it's impossible for the jiva to not serve? Even if you're the president, the ruler, the whatever, actually the jiva's position can never be changed because it's actually his dharma. Although if he wants to even be the king and the ruler, but still he's a servant. So that's why Jiver Swarup Hoy, Krishner Nityadas. The Swarup of the Jiva is that he's the eternal servant of Krishna. So every service that anyone performs in the human society, even taking care of the dog, okay, every service has some attractive feature which drives the servitor progressively on and on. Every one of us within this world is perpetually engaged in some sort of service, and the impetus for such service is the pleasure we derive from it. Now, if you really deeply think about that, you'll see that this is a fact. Nobody does anything in their life unless they're going to derive some kind of pleasure from it, or by doing that thing, they get something from remuneration which will enable them to enjoy. But everyone is trying to enjoy. Now, here's the really good sentence here. Driven by affection for his wife and children, a family man works day and night. Right? That also means family woman. What are they driven by? What are they driven by? What's driving them?
Making their family happy.
Their affection. Their affection for their family, for their children, for their wife, husband. In this little unit, what's going on is simply that. This cultivation of affection, this ongoing drive to provide, to play this role, to reciprocate, to look after, to protect, to nourish, to feed, to maintain. All of that's being driven by one single principle. And what is that? Affection. See? Then he says, Prabhupada says, in a case like a philanthropist. What's a philanthropist? A person who's always trying to show his love and embracing the greater family. So Prabhupada says a philanthropist works in the same way for love of the greater family. Everyone looks at Gandhi like that, there are so many figures. They're the father of the nation, the such and such. So, a nationalist, he works for the cause of his country and his countrymen. Right now, this is a big phenomenon going on in the world today. Country and countrymen. Nationalism. What's the other word? Sovereignty. Everyone has the sovereignty, the right to rule their own selves according to how they want. That's how humanity goes on. Of course, they don't have a monarchical system, but now it's democratic, which doesn't work so well. And in some ways, it's ridiculous. Prabhupada called it demon crazy. Democracy, demon crazy. And there's so many ways of cheating and so forth. But at any rate, Prabhupada said, okay, it's what it is. So today, nowadays, they want to stop. There's a section of persons who want to be on the top, controlling everybody. And it's called globalism. They want to be the only controller on the earth planet. They want to control, by force, every living being and every resource, and like this, owner and controller. What they want to do is they want to become Ishvara. Because Ishvara is the controller of all the energies, so they want to do that. But that's not the natural condition for human society. Just like if somebody wanted to come and force you and your family and your wife and your children to do such and such all the time, that would not be very acceptable, because the whole principle of that loving transaction and unit, the family unit, is freedom. Freedom. So this is what's happening, and it's not the first time. It'll go on continually. As the day of Brahma continues, it will always happen that the demons, they want to usurp. They're always trying to usurp. How many stories do we have in Srimad Bhagavatam and all throughout Puranic Vedic literature and so forth? They're always trying to usurp because it's their nature, right? But there is a justice system in the universe that if somebody does something which causes harm to other living beings and suffering, then they have to suffer. The automatic law. So, but people are happy when they have a cause to work for and to embrace. So nowadays, this mood is being stirred up a lot in people, that we have to stand up against this tyranny and this absolute control by demoniac forces. So that now it becomes like a righteous cause, okay? And it's called nationalism, okay? So now Prabhupada summarizes and he says that force which drives the philanthropist, the householder, and the nationalist is called rasa. And now he says rasa, or a kind of mellow. The term mellow was used first by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And in parentheses it says, after mellow, it says relationship. So it's called rasa, or a kind of mellow, whose taste is very sweet. So he's saying here that same force, there's a sweetness in that. There's a sweetness that is tasted. And that sweetness is love and affection. That's what's tasted. So now he says, bhakti rasa, this is the first time he's introducing the word bhakti rasa, is a mellow different from the ordinary rasa which is enjoyed by mundane workers. Mundane workers labor very hard day and night in order to relish a certain kind of rasa which is understood as sense gratification. Because ultimately, when you break down the love and affection of the mundane world, it's completely rooted and based upon sense gratification. So Prabhupada is distinguishing here. Yes, he's saying the relish or taste of the mundane rasa, it does not long endure. And therefore, mundane workers are always apt to change their position of enjoyment. You know, Srila Gurudev would kind of joke a lot whenever he brought up like the Western culture, and because it's even to this day quite different than the Indian culture in terms of marriage, and how they just switch one after the other after the other. You see? And he would make some joke, like mentioning some famous, I forget which actress he was mentioning, but how many times married again. So the actual fact of the matter is that this is the nature of the mundane ras. He says, so mundane workers labor very hard day and night in order to relish a certain kind of rasa which is understood as sense gratification. But the relish or the taste of the mundane rasa does not long endure. And therefore, mundane workers are always apt to change their position of enjoyment. A businessman is not satisfied by working the whole week. Therefore, Wanting a change for the weekend, he goes to a place where he tries to forget his business activities. Then, after the weekend is spent in forgetfulness, he again changes his position and he resumes his actual business activities. Material engagement means accepting a particular status for some time and then changing it. We could break that down. You want to size up completely what is material engagement? It means accepting a particular status for some time and then changing it. Boils down to that. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandhar Vika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Govinda Jiva Ki Jai. Jai Radha. So this position of changing back and forth, there's a term for that. You know what that is? A Sanskrit term. This position of changing back and forth is technically known as Bhog Tyag. What's the meaning of Bhog? Enjoyment. Yes. Bhog means enjoyment. And Tyag means renunciation, giving up. So this position of changing back and forth is technically known as Bhog Tyag, which means a position of alternating sense enjoyment and renunciation. Sense enjoyment and renunciation. Always back and forth. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj speaks about this. How it's like two sides of the same coin. And sometimes used as like a pendulum. It swings back and forth, always back and forth. Because material enjoyment does not long endure. We just heard that. So therefore there's some alternating, you see, always. Bhog Tyag, Bhog Tyag. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj also sizes up the nature of this world. He says, this world is the, how did he call it? The land of exploitation. Yeah, that's how he put it. The land of exploitation. So in the material world, everyone is exploiting. They're exploiting something to get their happiness. But he said this land of exploitation also has another land, and it's called the land of renunciation. Because when someone exploits, what ultimately happens when you exploit, you start to suffer. Because that's the nature of the material world. The more that you try to enjoy it, the more you suffer. So, therefore, the opposite of that, Bhog Tyag, is renunciation. So, in the material world, everyone is doing these two things all the time. And they're thinking that they're going to get relief from all the suffering of their attempt to exploit by renouncing. But it doesn't last. Because they have to swing back in the other direction again and try to enjoy. So then Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, these two areas, regions, domains, enjoyment, exploitation, renunciation, alternating back and forth. But there is the land of dedication, he calls it. Dedication. And that is the realm of bhakti. Now, or material renunciation. Why? Because of your constitutional position. Sense gratification does not endure for long, and it is therefore called chapala sukha, which means flickering happiness. Flickering, chapala. Flickering happiness. For example, an ordinary family man who works very hard day and night and is successful in giving comforts to the members of his family, he thereby relishes a kind of mellow. But his whole advancement of material happiness immediately terminates along with his body as soon as his life is over. Death is therefore taken as the representative of God for the atheistic class of men. The devotee, he realizes the presence of God, by devotional service. Whereas the atheist realizes the presence of God in the shape of death. At death, everything is finished, and one has to begin a new chapter of life in a new situation, perhaps higher or lower than the last one. In any field of activity, political, social, national, or international, the result of our actions will be finished with the end of life. That is sure. Now, bhakti rasa, however, the mellow relished in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, does not finish with the end of life. It continues perpetually and is therefore called amrita, that which does not die but exists eternally. The term amrita has two meanings. One is immortal, always existing, amrita, cannot be destroyed. And also amrita also means nectar. So, it continues perpetually and is therefore called amrita, that which does not die but exists eternally. This is confirmed in all Vedic literatures. Bhagavad Gita says that a little advancement in bhakti rasa can save the devotee from the greatest danger, that of missing the opportunity for human life. You know about that verse? It's the verse where it says, even a little bit of advancement on this path can save one. Mahato bayat, from the greatest danger, the greatest fear. What really is the greatest danger and fear? It means that you will leave this present body and you will lose the opportunity for human life. You'll go back down into the lower species. There is no greater danger or fear in the whole material universe than this. So what does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? How one can be saved from that? Prabhupada is quoting that, and he's saying, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that even a little advancement, little, and in what? In bhakti rasa. It can save the devotee from the greatest danger, that of missing the opportunity for human life. So the verse of Krishna's is Neha Bikrama Nashosti Pratyavayo Navidyate Svalpam Apiyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bayat. Here Krishna is introducing, in the second chapter, right toward the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, he's introducing what is called bhakti. And he's telling that this pathway, even a little bit of advancement, Neha Bikramanashosti Pratyavayo Navidyate Svalpam. Alpa means just a little bit. Svalpam Apiyasya Dharmasya. This Dharma is called Sanatan Dharma. Even a little bit of it. Svalpam Apiyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bayat. Trayate means to deliver you, to free you from what? The greatest fear. Mahato Bayat. Bhaya means fear, and it also means danger. So, therefore, Krishna is telling that this Nashosti, Neha Bikrama Nashosti, that means whatever you do on this pathway, even a little bit, it never diminishes. That's your permanent asset. What you put into that, we call it like your devotional bank account, right? There actually is. It's there in your subtle body. It's being accounted for. And what you do will never ever be forgotten by the Supreme Controller. So he says, therefore, Sva alpam apiyasya dharmasya. Alpam means just a little bit. Suppose that you're even in an animal body, but let's at least talk about human body. Because even an animal eating some prasadam, he now gets marks. in the animal body. He can't directly participate in bhakti. Not knowingly he cannot do. But he gets sukriti, agyata sukriti. But when the human being does even a little bit of service that is counted permanently in his permanent asset in the bank account, even a little bit, and that little bit can actually save the jiva, despite whatever he's done in his life, from having to degrade back down into the lower species. This is a very important point to understand about bhakti. No other system can do this. Now, so the rasas derived from our feelings in social life and in family life, or in the greater family life of altruism, philanthropism, nationalism, socialism, communism, etc., those rasas that are derived from those feelings do not guarantee that one's next life will be as a human being. None of those feelings and none of those material rasas, none of them will guarantee that your next life will be as a human being. We prepare our next life by our actual activities in the present life. That's how your next life is prepared. A living entity is offered a particular type of body as a result of his action in the present body. These activities are taken into account by a superior authority known as Daiva, or the authority of God. This Daiva is explained in the Bhagavad Gita as the prime cause of everything. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that a man takes his next body by Daiva Netrena, which means by the supervision of the authority of the Supreme. In an ordinary sense, Daiva is explained as forms. The choice does not depend on our selection, but is awarded to us according to our destiny. If our body at present is engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness, then it is guaranteed that we will have at least a human body in our next life. A human being engaged in Krishna consciousness, even if unable to complete the course of Bhakti Yoga, takes birth in the higher divisions of human society so that he can automatically further his advancement in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, all bona fide activities in Krishna consciousness are amrita, or permanent. This is the subject matter of the nectar of devotion. You have a question?
I was just wondering, Maharaj, how this relates to the Bhagavad Gita verse, whatever state of being one remembers, when he puts the body in that state, he will attain without fail.
Right, okay.
So it seems like all of these activities, cumulative activities of bhakti over the course of a lifetime, seem to be what here is determining the next lifetime.
Yeah.
But if someone is doing some bhakti and then at the time of death they're remembering, I mean, there's the case of Bharat Maharaj, but that's such a specific example.
Yeah.
But if they're remembering some mundane thing, or how does that relate to this?
Right. So the mechanics you see here is being explained by action. But also, what's not being explained here in this particular context is the subtle effects. Because action is caused by thoughts. You have thoughts, you have desires, and so forth. So it's the mental activities, thinking, feeling, willing, etc. And as we associate by association with the modes of material nature, we act in certain ways, right? Because the subtle body also becomes conditioned by that. So, yes, of course, there is also the application of mental, because Bhakti Yoga is not just physical. Bhakti Yoga, just like even the activities, as he's pointed out, of mundane workers is not just physical, but it's driven by another thing, okay? So, when someone engages in the activities of Bhakti Yoga, even without so much knowledge about them and so forth. That's the special advantage given by the Supreme Lord for the jivas, that just the activity alone can save you. Just like, naming his son Narayan, Ajamil. It saved him, even though his activities were all degraded and so forth. But the chanting of the holy name actually purified him while he was calling his son in ordinary activities. He had no intention of thinking about Narayan, but the name was there. And Krishna arranged that to purify him and to save him. So he was actually getting completely purified from all the sins that he had committed just by saying, Narayan, come here and eat. This is why it's a tremendous, in all Vedic culture, they give spiritual names. They give spiritual names. So human beings must have a spiritual name. Otherwise, they're not really have come to the human platform yet. The spiritual name of God must be there for them. It's a samskara. It's developing a samskara. So, yes, Krishna says, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam, tyaja dante kalevaram. So here is bhavam, means the state of being that one remembers at the time of death. Tyaja dante kalevaram, when they're giving up the body. Tam tam evaiti konteya sada tad bhava bhavita. Again, he will attain that nature. He will attain that state. So, of course, for Krishna, he gives some special help. But just for the ordinary jivas that are absorbed in the karmic world, they'll suffer and enjoy. But even there, Krishna, it depends on their internal mood, their sincerity and so forth. Krishna will help. So, like that's why Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj told, sincerity is invincible. I like that so much. Sincerity is invincible. If someone has sincerity, it doesn't matter where they are, who they are, what family, what condition, if they're sincere jiva, Krishna is going to help them. It means that nothing else can harm that. It's invincible to all other effects and everything. So there is a combination, just to answer your question. But the advantage of doing the Krishna conscious activities is now you come under divine energy. So, yeah, so now in finishing, if our body at present is engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness, then it is guaranteed that we will have at least a human body in our next life. A human being engaged in Krishna consciousness, even if unable to complete the course of Bhakti Yoga, takes birth in the higher divisions of human society, so that he can automatically further his advancement in Krishna consciousness. This also works for the materialist. What they are longing to achieve and accomplish, Krishna also reciprocates with that. They take birth in certain situations, eventually. Maybe they have to be punished for some time, but they desire to have money, to have all these things. Well, they're given that. That's the nature of Krishna's relationship with the jivas. This whole material world is the field of activity, and he's allowing freedom. But there's also the reaction. But nevertheless, if they keep on wanting such and such, then Krishna gives. One time Prabhupada was explaining how, like in India, you have groups of thieves. They're like professional thieves. And they also worship God. They do rituals and so forth so that their stealing and plundering will be successful. But then you have also the pious people, or the devotees who are praying, oh God, please protect me against these thieves. So God has a very complicated job because he has to award both. It's the nature. He's the, what's it called? The giver of the fruits and so forth. There's a name for that, I'm forgetting right now. Yes, so therefore, all bona fide activities in Krishna consciousness And bona fide activities means actual activities of bhakti. That's what this book is giving the outline of, how to do the activities of bhakti, which are all bona fide, authorized, deity worship, the 9 limbs of bhakti, the 64 limbs of bhakti, all of this. So all bona fide activities in Krishna consciousness are amrita, or permanent. This is the subject matter of the nectar of devotion. This is the subject matter. A few more minutes, or are you ready?
I'm fine.
Either way.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay. So, just a little bit more. This eternal engagement in bhakti rasa can be understood by a serious student upon studying the nectar of devotion. Adoption of bhakti rasa, or Krishna consciousness, will immediately bring one to an auspicious life free from anxieties, and will bless one with transcendental existence, thus minimizing the value of liberation. What a sentence. He's actually telling here what we were talking about the other day, how even anyone, adoption of bhakti rasa or Krishna consciousness will immediately bring one to an auspicious life free from anxieties, and will bless one with transcendental existence. But what an amazing thing that there can be such a movement, such a culture, such a teaching available for human beings, which gives this kind of effect in their life. Immediately, he says, immediately will bring one to an auspicious life, free from anxieties. Have we experienced that? Yes. We experience it again and again, right? But it's true. So bhakti rasa itself is sufficient to produce a feeling of liberation. Here he's saying, this minimizes the value of liberation, this auspicious life, right? What is liberation? But he says, bhakti rasa itself is also sufficient to produce a feeling of liberation. Yes. Because it attracts the attention of the Supreme Lord Krishna. This is the thing. You're attracting his attention. He's always watching, isn't he? Isn't he always watching? How is he watching everyone? Yes, as the super soul. But when you start to do activities of bhakti, it attracts his attention. It attracts his attention. Yes. So generally, neophyte devotees are anxious to see Krishna or God, right? Right? Generally, we want to see God. I really want to see you. I really want to feel you. I really want to know you. Right, because neophyte devotee. But very good mood that our dear Bhakta George was putting forward to the world. My sweet Lord. Yes. So, generally neophyte devotees are anxious to see Krishna or God. But God cannot be seen or known by our present materially blunt senses. The process of devotional service, as it is recommended in the Nectar of Devotion, it will gradually elevate one from the material condition of life to the spiritual status wherein the devotee becomes purified of all designations. What does designation mean? I, me, mine. They're called upadi in Sanskrit. Material designation. What am I? Who am I? What is mine? I, me, mine. So all of those are called false designations. Why are they false? Because they're temporary, right? We take them very, very seriously in the material condition of life. I'm an American. I'm a Trump follower. Well, I'm a Biden follower. You know, it's all I, me, mine. The material designations, right? So the material conditioned soul is very strongly bound by these conceptions of life. Like even our children here, they have very good conceptions because they know we're devotees. We're in Krishna's school. We're living in Gurudev's place, right? And these are purifying. They don't have so many material designations. They might think, I live in Badger. But they don't really think Badger. No, I live in New Braj. See? So their whole childhood and upbringing is very auspicious, full of auspiciousness. And they don't really interact with anyone but devotees. Their mother, father, relatives, friends, all devotees, right? So, and they don't eat anything except Krishna Prasadam. And when they sing and dance, of course, when they're playing, that's another thing. But when they sing and dance, what are they singing about? Yashomati Nandana Vrajavara Nagara, right? So how auspicious is this? You cannot become more auspicious than this. And we have some of the grown-ups here who went through the same thing. And how auspicious is their life? See? So, yes. So, okay, that's enough. Govind, are you there? Okay. Gaur Premanandi, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Nectar of Devotion ki jai, Srila Rupa Goswami Pada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna.
It's Prema Mari's day.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I just thought. Prema Mari hasn't left for a while. Okay.